Okay, very interesting things coming up today. Continuation of last week. Yeah. I don't remember exactly how far we got. Uh, but we'll review a little bit because it's all one inyan. So we were talking about the relationship between minus and malchus. As the Gemara says, right? Malchus tehafech leminus. That's the subject here. And Ramesha went into, on page Pevav, he went into the very fundamental issue of the whole, how did the world come into existence? How does the Bria happen? Right? And the way he said it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created an empty space which needs to be filled. Right? And that's the inyan of the Mokum of the Bria. Okay, and so existence means, as a second paragraph on page Pevav, Kiyum al Yadei Milo Yichisaron. That's what existence. That's what it means to exist. It's Milo Yichisaron, filling the Chisaron. We're on page Pevav, right? Okay, the Shir Maimer Yud Aleph. Okay, and then we saw in the bottom that how do you fill Chisaron? And this is the key paragraph of the whole shir, so we'll read it again at the bottom of Pevav. Shnei ofanim shel hashlama. There are two different ways that you can complete, that you can fill in the void, the empty space that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in order to allow creation. So let's read that paragraph again inside, very fundamental. Shnei ofanim shel hashlama. He says, Elo shebe'etzem hachisaron munach shtei efshariyot shel milui. And the fact that there is such a chisaron, such a lack, such a void, there are two possibilities of filling it. Ofen achad hu shebnei adam yicholim letfos et hamatzav shel hachisaron ke'etzem hametziut. That existence, right, is defined as being an internal lack, an eternal lack. Right? That something is, that the world exists. That's what existence is. Existence is lacking, is missing, is needing, is right, and that's what exists. That's what it means to exist. Right? Baruch Hu created us. He removed himself from the world, and he created a world that needs, and that's what existence is. So umimela. If that's the way, if that is the definition of existence, existence is the need to fill, right, and it's always in a state of need. And so then the chisaron has to be completed from within itself. There's no outside source. Right? There's nothing outside of there which you need, which you can draw into the existence of this world in order to complete what the world is. There's nothing to draw from, right, in order to create or in order to fill the vacuum which was created. And so therefore, the creation or the fulfillment has to come from within the world itself. Meaning, that's what we said, that this is the minus, this is the false way of looking at things, because this is the way of saying that ein olam elo echad, that there's only one world. The world that we see, the world that we experience, that's it. And it has to supply its own solutions to its own problems. And there's no other place from which to draw solutions to the problems and to what is lacking in this world. Aval hemeti, so that's way number one, that's step number one. Aval hemeti, what is the truth? That how are we supposed to fill that which is lacking? We're supposed to fulfill it from that true reality which removed itself from here. Okay. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu removed himself from the world, and he expects us to bring him back into the world. So when we feel that there's something lacking in the world, so then the place to look for the solution is outside the world. Is to look to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is yearning, so to speak, kaviyachol, right, to bring himself back into the world, right? And that's what he's counting on us to do. He's counting on us to do avoda, Torah, mitzvos, which will recreate the existence. We're on page Pevav in the bottom, right? Right? Which will recreate the existence of that which of the shleimus that it's going to be recreated. So where do we get it from? We get it from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We get it from outside the system, and that's what we say that there are two worlds. Right? It's that right? We say Baruch Hashem me'olam ve'ad ha'olam. There's two different worlds. There's two different. There's a world from which we draw our existence, as opposed to the first way, which is that there is no other place from which to draw existence other than from within the world itself. The world is a closed system, and everything that exists has to become and has to be found, is to be found here. But he says, well, so the Hainu, I'll just complete the sentence there at the bottom of the page, Pevav. Lahachzir et ritzono yitbarach bebriya yedei avodah shel bnei adam. That's the mission. That's the purpose of creation. The purpose of creation is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu withdrew himself. He created this void, and he wants the world. He wants to be brought back into it, but he wants us to do it. Okay, that was the point. B'ofen she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu sam otanu ba'olam she'nedar migilui kvodo yisbarach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us into a world where the gilui kvod, the revelation of the kvodo yisbarach, is lacking, is missing totally. Ve'al ha'adam lehakir b'metziuto yitbarach b'metziut amitit k'metziut amitit, and we have to recognize that true existence is in the existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's where things really exist, right? And the existence that we experience is not a true existence unless it's connected to the true existence, right? Through our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which comes through our avoda, through our Torah and mitzvahs, and then we really exist. But if we don't have that connection, so then we're living in a kind of fantasy world, a kind of pseudo existence, which is seem to exist, but since we're not connected to the source of true existence, so that's like a chicken that's flying around without a head, right? That it could fly around, it looks like it's alive, it can mimic being alive, but it's only a mimicry. It's only an illusionary kind of existence. Because true existence means that you're connected to the source of existence, which is that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu withdrew in order for us to bring him back. V'lishtadel lahavi legilui kvodo beoto yechisaron. That's what we have to try to do. Ubazeh hainu al yedei ha'avoda v'hashlamat hachisaron. And through that, through our avoda, and through completing the chisaron, anu borim et hametziut shelanu ba'olam. So we create our reality. We create our existence. That's what makes us exist, because existence is outside of the world, right? Outside of our experience, and so how do we want to come into existence, right? We want to exist. And we want to exist, so that's how we exist. We exist by connecting ourselves to the source of existence, the true source of existence. However, if we don't recognize that there's a true source of existence outside of ourselves, so then we don't really exist. Then our mitziut is not a true mitziut. Right? It's not the way that God created us to be. Right? Okay, because the mitziut, again, because the real mitziut can only be accomplished through human beings. As we have said in earlier shurim, right? The Metziut can't be accomplished through angels and can't be accomplished through animals. Right? The human beings are in between, because human beings have both the body and the soul, which means that we have the ability to have that connection through our neshamos, to be connected to the world above, to the outside, to what's outside of our existence, and we have the bodies, which can be the home, can be the kli, which is receives, which is the mekabel of that, and so we can do it, right? The angels don't have that duality, and animals don't have that duality. So memela, right? We're the only possible ways that things can really exist. Right? and everything else that exists outside, that seems to exist outside of Torah mitzvahs, doesn't really exist. Okay? That's the message here. Okay. So now we're going to, again, I don't remember how far did we read last time? Somebody want to remind me?
We're up to where we got last time now.
Well, we're up to where we got last time? Okay. Because this is okay. So because that's this last paragraph is the key, which is the foundation of everything that's going to come. Okay. So now we're going to talk about Haminus Varishus, right? Hatushuka Limilui. There's the tshuka, right? The tshuka is the desire, right? The tshuka is a strong form of desire, right? The desire for fulfillment, and there's two ways that this is going to be fulfilled. Okay, so if we recall, it says that we saw we brought the psukim, right? If you go back to the first page of the Shiram page, Daf Pei Hey, right? We quote the Gemara, right, in the first Alukash de Banot. We talk about the leech. Remember, we started out talking about the leeches. Okay, and the leeches have the pasuk in Mishlei, as we pointed out, and the leech has two daughters, literally, right? And let's read that paragraph inside because that's what we're going to be talking about now. B'maimer hakodem, Itchalnu daber al kesher, as Moshe says there. In the previous year, we began to speak about the connection between Malchus and Minus. Ve'ech ha-minus hi ha'hefech ha-Malchus, right? Right now, but now we're going to get into it much more deeply. But hekshir lezeh, in this context, yesh beGemara avodah zarah, right? The Gemara quotes the pasuk from Mishlei, la'alukash te banot, and it says, who are these two banot? Have, my give, right? My have, right? What does have mean? Right? Omar Mar Ukva, Kol Shtei Banot, Shetzuakot Migehenna. It's the voice of two of the two daughters, right, who cry out from Gehenna. The two daughters that cry out from Gehenna. Omrod Bo'olam Hazeh Have, bring. That's what Rashi says. Umaniu, as the Gemara says, Umaniu Minus Verishus. Who are these two daughters? These two daughters are Minus and Rishus. Okay, so Minus, we have some kind of working definition. That's the apikorsis that we've been talking about. That there's only one world. Rishus is what we're going to be talking about now. Rishus is used here in the same way that it's used in Pirkei Avos. Evizihirim birishus. You have to be right. Rishus is the government. Right. You have to be careful about the government. We have to take care not to bring down the government, or we should respect the government because the government is what keeps us makes Seder in the world. If it wouldn't be for a rishus, so then everybody would be swallowing everybody else alive, and so therefore every zero rishus. But that's the way that we're using the word rishus now. Okay. And we'll see that that's related to Malchus, and that's how we're going to get into the connection between Minus and Malchus. Okay, so now let's go back to our page on Pei Zayin. Okay, so he says Koach HaKfira v'Koach HaBittul. There are two. I'm sorry. Soakos I didn't read that paragraph yet. Soakos Megehenim. Umizen Navin. Okay, the paragraph starts. Umizen Navin ma'at es mitziutam shel otam banot. Harishut aminut hatzoakot yachad megehenim hav. As we just reread the Gemara. Umashma, and Moshe adds in parentheses here, shehem ke'ein achayot ha'amot. They're like twin sisters. In other words, Minus and Rishus go together, and they're really two sides of the same coin, but two different sides, for two very different sides. One is the positive and one is the negative. Dine, Inyana Gehenim. First it says they call out from Gehenim. What does it mean to call out from Gehenim? He says here that the Gehenim is to be understood symbolically. Right? That Gehenim is Tokef HaHeder, right? The absolute power of absence, of non-existence. That's what Gehenim is. Right? If a person winds up in Gehenim, Chas v'Shalom, that means that he's winding up as a non-existent being. Okay, he quotes Maral. Okay. She'af pam lo mitmale. In other words, it never will be filled. Okay. In other words, it's always going to have call out for more. Bebechinas, as his pasuk says, and this is a continuation of the pasuk in Mishlei, she'ol v'otze racham eretz lo sava mayim ve'esh lo amrahom. Right, that the she'ol, the grave, the otze racham, the womb that's withheld, eretz lo sava mayim, right, the land which is not satisfied, not satiated with water, ve'esh lo amrahon, and the fire never says enough. Okay, that's the idea that Sheol here is the grave. It's also the reference to Gehenna, right? That's something which never has enough. You can't fill. You can never fill it. V'hatzakahi, and so when we say that they're tzoakot, that they cry out from Gehenna, it's the striving, the ambition, the great desire of this heder, of this absence, this lack, this non-existence to become filled. In other words, there's a situation which constantly requires filling because it's never going to be satiated. As much as you put in, it's going to be consumed. It's going to be reduced to nothing again. Right? Just like if you burn something, it's reduced to nothing. So then, so whatever goes into this nothingness is reduced to nothing, and there's always a constant call for more, more, more. I never have enough. So that's the symbolism of Gehenna here. So Gehenna is that they're calling out these two sisters, these two daughters, these two leeches, are crying have, give. We sort of said the leech is something that always is lacking. It gets its life from another source. So what does it mean? So let's get a little bit more into the terms that we're describing here. Koach hakfira v'koach habitul. These represent two different kochos, two different forces in the world. The force of kfira, which is the heresy, the absolute denial of the other world, and koach habitul, and as the force of being mevatel. And here bitul is used in a very positive sense. Right? It's the opposite of kfira. It's being mevatel this world to the other world. Okay, as we will see. These are two ways to fill this space. Hatzad Rishon, the first way is hakfira hagamura, the absolute kfira she'omeret she'metziut ha'olam hi be'etzem metziut shel chisaron. It says this world is a world of lack. It's always going to be lacking. That's what existence means. There's never going to be enough. There's always, right? There's no way for the world to be filled because the world was created in a void of lack, and there's no place from which to draw from outside of itself. It's totally within itself. So if it's totally within itself, so then it's always, if it's lacking, there's no way to fill that lack, because you're only going to be taking from one to the other, right? Right? There's always going to be something that's, whatever you take to fill, right, it's like if you pull it from one side, it's going to uncover the other side. Right? Trying to pull a blanket over two people that it's too small. Right? You pull one side, the other side is going to be empty. There's always going to be something missing, right? Because you don't have more than what you have. And what you have is, by definition, lacking, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu withdrew himself and he created a world where things are lacking. V'zeh minus. This is what we refer to when we talk about minus, right? That's Sheni Omer. How are we going to deal with this? We have to be mevatel ourselves. We have to nullify our existence to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ubekach nemaleh et hachalal b'metziut amitit. Because the more we say that we recognize that our existence is conditional upon being connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that means that we're mevatel ourselves and say that we have nothing, right? We recognize that we have nothing. We recognize that we are living in a world of chisaron, and we say, okay, right, where are we going to, right, how are we going to fill it? We're going to fill it by being mevatel ourselves, by saying that we have no real existence, and we have to draw our existence from our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what we mean by bittul. Right? It means that we understand that any existence that we think we have, that we imagine we have to realize isn't true, except to the extent that it's connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ubekach, and in this way, nimale et hachalal b'metziut amitit. This way we can fill, right, the void, the space, the empty space, with the true existence. V'zehu yesod metziuta shel hareshut. This is how the reshut works, right? Meaning, we'll see, right? Because it says, Rashi there says, what does the reshut do? The reshut collects taxes, right? That's what the government does, right? But that's so in a certain sense, this is a positive way of recognizing that, let's say, the government has to get realize that it needs its sustenance, its fulfillment from a source outside of itself. Right? And so it's a mushal. We'll see that it's a far mushal to the concept of malchus, but it is relating to we can't do it without bringing in something from the outside. Okay? And somebody who understands things, who grabs things, who understands in this way, then he is basing his existence on the true reality, and that is a revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's malchus. Okay, and we'll see. He'll fine tune this a little bit to help us understand the relationship between the malchus, or the reshus that we experience, and the malchus that the ultimate malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that'll take care of. I'll try to explain the next paragraph. But he's saying is that when we say reshus, when the Gemara says that the reshus is the counterpart to the minus, right? There's minus and there's reshus. He says there's two different ways of looking at the world. The minus is the way of looking at existence as being self-sufficient totally from in itself, and the reshus is a kind of a shadow or a reflection of malchus, which recognizes that it has to take from outside of itself. Well, let's try to understand exactly how this relationship. We'll see in the next paragraph, because the idea is this is a very important idea that we should understand in the whole when we think about the concept of malchus in this world. What does it mean that there are kings, that there are rulers in this world? How do they fit into the system? How do they fit into God's system? That why should there be such a thing as rulers? Right? God created the world. There's malachim, there's kings. Right? Goes back to Parshas Lech Lecha. We have 4 kings against the 5 kings. Right? We know that the whole history of the world centers around kings, and that's so. Where does this fit into the general system, and how is it related to Malchus? So here's a very interesting paragraph. The Afsha Rishus, right? Quotation marks. Hamuskeret kan. In other words, we're not talking about Malchus Shemayim here, right? We're talking about Rishus in the more, literal sense that we know, that we experience as a government, as we call it, right? The king's governance. He said, Malchus de'ara. Malchus de'ara. We're talking about the Malchus of this world. Aval kvar kaimalan. Right? But first thing is we have to know. Malchusa de'ara ke'ein malchusa de'rikia. Right? That the way the world works down here is a reflection of the way the world works, the kingdom of heaven. Okay? Because Baruch Hu created the concept of kingdom, right, in this world, which is like everything in this world, right? Everything that exists in this world is somehow a lowering of some higher concepts. Everything that exists starts in Olamos Elyonim and comes and finds its way down into our existence. So into the physical existence that we recognize. So the same thing, Malchus, the concept of Malchus is in our world is Ke'ein Malchus Rikia. It works in the same way. The structures are similar. Okay? And obviously, Havdil Elef Havdalos, right, and different levels of holiness and different levels of spirituality and different levels of Kodesh Baruch Hu's presence being felt. But it's really, but it's the same idea, just lower. V'chi ein be'emet l'shum nivra koach shel malchus, ela derech malchus shemayim. The only malchus that can exist in this world is by means of, via the malchus shemayim. U'begemara mavur, right, and a very important line here. The Gemara says, "Shehabrocha al melech." Right, we make a bracha when you see a king. Right? And there's two possibilities. There's two brachos. One's for when you see a Melchi of Yisrael, Malchi Yisrael, and one when you see Malchi Goyim. So it says, "Abracha al Melchu, O Baruch shechalak michvodo lireov." God, right, Baruch Hashem, who chalak shares his kavod to those who fear him. That's the bracha that we make for Malchi Yisrael. Oh, Baruch, the other bracha is shenosan michvodo lebasav adam. He gave of his kavod. Both of them relate to the Kodesh Baruch Hu's kavod. Kodesh Baruch Hu brought his kavod into this world. Right? But there's two different forms. Right? There's a form of bringing the kavod into the world, right, with Malchei Yisrael, and there's a form of bringing his kavod into the world with Malchei Goyim. But essentially, when we see a melech, we are seeing a manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Midas HaMalchus in this world is brought down, and even if he's a goy, right, that's part of the Chiddush here. Even if he's a goy, even if he has no shaykhs to anything spiritual, anything that we can recognize, but the very fact that he's a melech is taking a part of something of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Midas HaMalchus. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created that so that there would be malchus in this world, that his kavod, that some reflections of some sliver of his kavod would be found in this world. And he says in the parentheses, "Havdel bein chalak lebein natan." Right, for the Malchei Yisrael we say chalak, right? He shared it. Right, natan chalak anachnu shutafim. We're partners. The Malchei Yisrael are partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in bringing in Malchus Shemayim into this world. Okay? We're partners with Malchus. Right? David HaMelech is David Melech Yisrael Chai B'Kayim, and David and all of his the kings who succeeded him. Right? These are all right. We're all part of it. We're bringing HaKadosh Baruch Hu into the world. That's the primary function of the Melech Yisrael, is to act as the conduit through which Malchus Shemayim comes into the world. Avol nosan hakavana shenatati l'sheni v'lokech la'atzmo. That means I give it to him. We're not partners. He takes it and he runs with it and he does with it as he wants, because he's not partnering with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but he's just taking a part of the musag of kavod and is using it to reign, to govern, to be the king. V'lashon ha'payit, right? What we say in the piyutim on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, hamamlich malachim v'lo melucha. We say this if we pay attention. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mamlich malachim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who crowns the kings, who coronates the king, who makes them into the kings. V'lo melucha, but the melucha remains with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? It's not something that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, you're the melech, and I have nothing to do with it. No, if you're the melech, then it's you're taking part with my melucha. It's I'm the melech, right? You're just a representation, a kind of figurehead or figure which represents me. V'nemar, another pasuk that we say every day, Ki Hashem hamelucha u'Moshe bagoyim. Right, right. Hashem is the melucha belongs to Hashem. Moshe bagoyim, and this is what rules over the goyim. So even though what the goyim experiences their own moshel, right, but it's really Hashem Melucha. V'loshen hamalch atfila we say in Aleinu, right, in other places. Ki hamalchus shelchahi, right, malchus belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ba'ofen sheharishut ba'olam hazeh. Okay, this is the yesod here. When we talk about reshut, right, the second way of gili of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world, mitkayemet al oto chisaron sheshorsho b'malchus shemayim. It exists in the same right because of that same lack which is which is roots in Malchus Shemayim. In other words, it's the Malchus, the Rishus, right, has its chisaron. What chisaron is it? It's the chisaron that HaKadosh Baruch Hu removed itself, and the Malchus in some way is reaching out to fill itself from something beyond, from some world beyond. Shehu mitzad hasiluk the Ein Sof, because this is mitzad the removal, right, the tzimtzum of the Ein Sof, of Hashem's infinity. The Gam HaMelech, some are known of od misim. Od misim, he puts on more taxes. Lemalot et hachisaron hazeh. Right? But the shorish of the chisaron is the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu removed himself, and we're trying to fill ourselves with something that has to do with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? We're bringing HaKadosh Baruch Hu into the world by being the Melech. Right? As we will see, this has been true, Moshe will claim, right, that this has been true until, right, the Malchus Revis, until, right, the Malchus that we live in, right now, and the Malchus that we live in, and that's the pshat, is that the Malchus te'afech leminus, as we will see, that things changed, right? Things changed, and that's the door before the Mashiach comes. The Malchus and the Minus are going to become equated with each other, right? But so far, right? But until we get to that point, Malchus, right, if you think about, I don't know, the Roman emperors or something, whatever, right? Their Malchus was a kind of Malchus which, right, wasn't inherently based on the fact that there's a insatiable lack, right? They filled the lack. They were able to take things and fill what was needed, right? And they took more taxes and more things and things, and they filled what was needed. V'al yedei zeh, right? Hu mechil et malchuto al hakol. That's how the Malchus is right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings his Malchus and everything through the Malachim, through those Malachim who he makes into kings, and they act as vehicles to bring in from the beyond the limitations of this world, right? Things which are godly and things which bring in Malchus Shemayim into this world. Okay, look in the footnote Zion, a very important footnote at the bottom. This is the editor, the transcriber. He says as follows, and he summarizes things, but this makes it very clear. V'al pi divrei Rabbeinu yotzei sheyesh shalosh dargot. There are three levels. Aleph, the highest level, is Malchus v'mechinas chalak. That's Malchus Yisrael, right? The Malchus of sharing, of being shutafim with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shebo ha-Malchus hi mitbateles la-Malchus Shomayla. The Malchus is bottled to the Malchus Shomayla, right? Whereas David Melech Yisrael is no independent existence, right? But David says that he's a worm, he's not a person. David is, right? That he doesn't have any his independent existence, right? That's the highest form of Malchus. That's the form of Malchus which is actively partnering and consciously partnering with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in creating and being mevatel itself and bringing HaKadosh Baruch Hu into this world. Al yedei milui, and that happens from being fulfilled, Ein Sof, from the Ein Sof. Bet, the second one is Malchus b'chinas Nosan. That's the Malchus of the Goyim. Sheba ha-Malchus lokachet le'atzma eze inyan mesuyam mitoch ha-metziut havitit. The Malchus takes something from some specific thing from the Metziut HaMitut, from the true reality, from the true existence. Ve'az hi mevakeshet misim v'arnona, and that's what is represented by the concept of collecting taxes. It's taking something from the Metziut HaMitit. The Gimel, Mashiyuvuar be'emshech, the third one is what we're going to see in the next paragraphs. Malchus nefach leminus. The third and the lowest madrega is when the Malchus turns into Midos. The Az Ein Kavod Klal, then the whole concept of Kavod Shemaim doesn't exist at all. There's nothing Kavod coming into the world. It's completely, right, barren, completely a secular kind of existence, existence that has no shaykhs to coming from anything from above. Elokol Malchus hi chisaron, and what the Malchus is chisaron. Lack. There's nothing is coming in getting pumped into the system to fulfill things, to create a fulfillment or a filling of the void. Right? It's just grinding itself over and over again. V'zeh matzav hayom. And this is the matzav today, and here he's referring to a paragraph which is said later. Right? He says that again, you have to see how it works out historically, but he points out that in the West, what we call Western culture, at least until recently, the kavod was given more to figures of religion than to figures of royalty. Right? The Pope is more important than the emperor or something, right? At least in a certain concept. Okay, so that's what he's saying. He's saying is that because the Malchus lacks any kavod, the Malchus lacks any kavod. Okay, and I think anybody who reads about today's Malchus in the world today recognizes how totally true it is that Malchus lacks any kavod, right? Right. I just read that they threw out the prince from Buckingham Palace because he turned out to be a no-goodnik. And you look at our president, not the biggest example of kavod, not our president, but your president, right? Back in. Oh, I'm still a citizen, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about, and even there's no kavod, right? I don't know if the kavod is given to the religion either anymore, but anyway, so that's the statement. Okay, so let's go back to the top of the page. Again, I'm still welcoming questions if anybody has anything to question, answer, or discuss.
How far does the concept of Malchut goes down the chain in terms of U.S.? Is it the president, governor, and may I mention a mayor?
I don't know. Again, yeah, I mean it could be I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but but anybody who is who in the positive sense, in the sense of chalak, anybody who is bringing some kind of order into the world, right, which stems from the malchus, from the true malchus, is involved, right? Is involved in the malchus, right? So it could be the chief of police. I don't know, somebody who's involved in bringing malchus into the world. Okay, but that's what he's saying here. Okay, so let's read on the nimsa. Shehaminus. So now the conclusion is, and now he's showing, he's summarizing that the minas and rishus shneim yonkim et hametziut me'oto makor shel chisara. Both of them, right, yonek, they both derive the sustenance. They're nurtured and nourished, right, from their existence is nourished from the same source of chisaron. V'yesh efsharut litfos et hametziut keminus o kemalchus. This is a very important thing. We can look at the world that we live in two ways. Some people will live in the world, will see the world as minus, and some people will see the world as malchus. Right? Some people will see the world as a place where, right, it's hopeless. There's no way to fill the gaps, to fill the needs that need to be filled. Right? The world is, right, there's no way. The needs are so great that they'll never be fulfilled, and it's just a hopeless, merry-go-round, right? Some treadmill of just going nowhere, right? All right, some kind of a Sisyphus, right? Trying to push something which was never going to get anywhere. The kivin should be arnu sheshor. So that's minus. Malchus says no. The world is lacking, right? For sure, there's lots of things lacking in the world, but that's exactly the point of the world. The Kodesh Baruch Hu created a world of lacking because that's the avoda, right? It's not hopeless. Certainly, Kodesh Baruch Hu created the world, right, with a void, right? And Kodesh Baruch Hu had every intention to make sure that void is filled. Right? That's what Kodesh Baruch Hu is going. It's going to happen. We know that it's going to happen, right? What's going to happen is going to take more time, it's going to take less time, right? But there's no suffix in our minds that ultimately HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not create the world in order that it should be run down into nothing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in order for it to reach a shleimus. So we know that there's a shleimus. So therefore, any lack that we see, that anything that we're missing, we perceive that as a challenge. We perceive that as something which the HaKadosh Baruch Hu placed there for a good purpose. He wants that to be there. So we have the work to do. We can get the reward for bringing it. Whatever the reasons that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu created that, but we look at everything that's wrong in the world as an opportunity. We look at everything that's wrong in the world as it's things, right? This is exactly the way it should be, meaning that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to bring a shleimus into the world. So everything that's wrong, right? We anticipate that it's going to be 100% better, right? That there is nothing that's going to be wrong forever. Right? That's what Moshe explained when we learned about Tchias HaMesim many years ago, when we learned in Rei Amuna, right? That Baruch Hu, there has to be Tchias HaMesim, because it has to be that every human being is going to come to his fulfillment, is going to come to his redemption. Right? It can't be that Baruch Hu created a human being that's not going to have a total existence, a total and complete existence. It can't be. Baruch Hu created everything to reach its ultimate potential, right? And then that's our avoda. Our avoda is to do our job to bring about that, to bring about that potential. But as we know, that's what the Ramchal taught us, that the Hanhagas HaYichud, right, is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to, if there's the Hanhagas HaMishpat, HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world according to the judgment of our deeds. But we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has Hanhagas HaYichud. He's going to bring the world to its ultimate completion and fruition and perfection. There's no question about it. Everything is going to be perfected. So therefore, that's the Midas HaMalchus. And that person lives with Midas HaMalchus. So you can either live in one world or the other, right? Meaning sometimes we vacillate between one world and the other because we have our good days and we have our bad days. I'm not saying that everybody is 100%. We're all going to be 100% on board every minute of the day, right? We should try to be, but it could be that it's a big challenge. But those are the two modes of existence. There's a mode of existence of Malchus, and there's a mode of existence of Minus, and that's going to happen. And since we explained already from the beginning that the root of the chisaron is infinite, because it's Baruch Hu removed himself from this. We don't know, again, very hard for me to know what these words mean, but Baruch Hu removed himself from, right? So it means if we remove infinity, infinity minus infinity is, you removed infinity, okay? So whatever that means, right? Shuhu Ein Sof Shistad Mechala. This is the Ein Sof which removed itself from space. L'chein Shtei Elu Heim HaChisronos HaGadolim B'Bria. These are the two ways of the Chisronos in the creation. B'ofen shekol kofer amiti la'olam lo yesaveh. A true kofer will never be satisfied. Because what he wants to do, and here's the point, he wants to complete the infinite chisaron with means which are from within itself, meaning with finite tools. Right? Because Baruch Hu created the world. The way the world looks, it's finite. Right? It's connected. It can be connected to infinity. But if you don't connect it to infinity, then it remains finite. And you're trying to create to fill an infinite void with finite means, and that's something that can't be done. Right? You can only, right, if you want to fulfill an infinite world, an infinite void, you have to do it with infinite. We have to connect with the infinite, with the Ein Sof, and we can't connect with that. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let's see. Let's try to get a little bit into the tachlis here. Okay, Hamalchus Arvis Minus. The fourth Malchus we're identifying now with Minus. The fourth Malchus is Malchus Rum. as he says, we'll see Western culture, etc. ועל זה אומרת הגמרא, שקודם שיבוא בן דוד הרשות האמינות יהפכו להיות דבר אחד. The Malchus will, right, turn into Midas. There will be one. It's not going to be two separate ways of looking at the world. Until this happens, until this point in history that we're describing, the before the coming of the Mashiach, until it happens, there are two ways of existence in the world, right? You could be a kofar, and you could be a Malchus, or you could be a Malchus person, and you could reasonably be a Malchus person. You could be a goy. You could be somebody who's not connected to Torah mitzvahs, but you're living in the world of Malchus because, let's say, put it this way: HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when He created the world, right, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the Midas HaMalchus into the world, and it had a strong foundation, it had a strong source. That's how the world existed. The world existed with Malachim. That koach of Malchus, right, which was real, which was connected to the Malchus Shemayim in some way, right, slowly petered out, slowly lost its koach, and Mela it sort of fades into a being parallel to or being congruent with the minas itself. Okay, let's see what that means. Klomar. ועל זה אומר הגמרא, שקודם שיבוא הרשות והמינוס יהפכו להיות דבר אחד, על ידי שהמלכוס עצמו תהפך למינוס. כלומר, what does it mean? במקום שהמלכוס תתמלא מהתוכן של עצמה, this is a little bit of a misleading phraseology here. It took me several readings to try to figure out exactly how the words fit what he's trying to say. But it means something like this: that in place of what's the positive thing, that the Malchus should be filled me'atochen shel atzma, from its own content, meaning the Malchus in this world will be filled from the content of Malchus, which is in the areas beyond this world. So instead of that, and here's the key line here: Hi ma'amida et etzem kiyuma ala chisaron. Today's Malchus, right, makes its kiyum, its existence, dependent upon chisaron. Kach she'etzem ha-malchus benuya la-chisaron, v'zeh sod ha-malchus ha-revis, malchus Edom, u'bezeh yishona mikol ha-malchiyot shekadmu la. Malchus Edom is different, right? But I want to get into the concrete example here. V'af she'anachnu medarim al dvarim mufshatim, the Moshe says, I don't blame you for not understanding what I'm talking about, because I'm talking about abstract things, okay? And we're trying to chop things. We can't bring mushals. Let's look at our lives today, and we'll try to get some kind of a picture of what we're talking about. Okay, so here we're going into current events. Edom chayim al chisaron. Edom lives on chisaron. Okay, now we're going to tie this back to Parshas Shavua. We got Esav involved here, and Esav hu Edom, etc. Im nitbonein al ma mitkayemet hamalchut harisha sholeta b'olam. If we will pay attention, what is the source of the existence of the Malchus Revius, which rules today? Okay, we know Malchus Revius of the Arba Malchios, right? There is Bavel, Poras, Yovan, and Edom, and Romi, and Edom, right? So what we are living under the rule of the fourth Malchus, but we call in our language Western culture. And we know that the fourth Malchus is going to be the one that transfers Malchus to the Mashiach. When the Mashiach is going to get his keys from the Malchus Revius, right? Somebody in the Malchus Revius is going to say, "Okay, the game is up. Right? We're finished. Right? We're moving off the stage of history. Here come Rabbi Mashiach and King Mashiach, and and you'll take over." Okay. Nireh shekol hatarbut v'kol hakalkala shelo mitkayimim al yetzirat tzrachim chadashim b'li gvul v'tachlis. If you look at what is our culture and our economy based on, right, creating new needs, right, without right, without any limitation, without any boundaries. Zohi tarbut shel hav. It's a tarbus. It's a culture of give, give, as we said in the Gemara. This is what the leech is yelling. Give more, give more. The world revolves around the fact that we don't have. We're lacking. Right? That's what creates. Lo tamina yakacha, meaning, as we'll see, right? But lo tamina yakacha. It wasn't always like this. Pam, a person could live 100 years in the same place, boto bayit, boto tzura, in the same house, in the same form, right? Without changing. I don't need anything. People, right, didn't feel that they needed anything other than what they had. Right? Needs, Seder. I need parnasa. Seder. Everybody needs parnasa. You go into the field, you work your field, and siyata d'ishmaya, you have crops every year. Right? Everybody lived in the same place, right? I mean, people, even 100, 150 years ago, most people in the world didn't move more than 15 miles away from their place of birth, right? Ever, right? They didn't go traveling. They didn't go to the big cities. They just lived where they were. Right? Hayom, hakol mivusas halakoach hanosei shel chisron. Everything is based on the fact that we're a consumer society that needs. V'chol chisaron moli chisaron nosaf. Everything that we lack right, just makes a new lack. That's why the malchus is turned into minus. What does it mean, minus? Because minus is that form of existence which will never be satiated because it's trying to fulfill itself from within itself. And so it's always trying, because the more I try to create, the more I need, because I'm taking and I'm not refilling it, and it's just the hole is getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Right? So I guess maybe trying to to live just borrowing money. Right? I borrow. My debts get deeper and deeper. I dig myself in deeper and deeper holes because I'm trying to live on what the thing is itself, and I'm not bringing anything else. So say, imagine a guy doesn't work, right, and he's just borrowing money, and he has no way to pay back the money, right? So, and then he just keeps on borrowing more and more money because there's no way to do it. So that's what it is, right? Okay. I'm just going to get to the well, maybe we'll come back to it later. Right? Okay, let's just turn to page Sadik just to see. What he's talking about in a less abstract way, right? So zenora litbonen ech kol olam talui b'tzira shel tzrachim chadashim. How the whole world, right, exists only through creating new needs, right? Ubederech mashal im bnei adam yachlitu she'ein tzorich b'mechonit chadasha kol shana v'chadoma. Let's say today people buy cars every year, every couple of years, right? People, you have to buy a new car, right? Let's say people decided we don't need new cars. What would happen? Rov batei acharoshet yafsiku lavod. Most of the factories in the world would stop working. Ve'olam kulo yitmotet, and the whole world would collapse. Yeah. Why do we? Right? Because you have the only way we can provide jobs is because I need a new car, and if I need a new car, so then there's a whole chain of things that go into it, and then and people can live, right? And the economy works, right? But if chas v'sholom, right, everybody decided we don't need new cars, and everybody would go on strike and say, all the cars that we have are enough, and we don't need to buy another car for another 5 years, then things would collapse. That's the mashal. It's the infinite needs. And if people decide instead of chasing after new needs, right, new necessities, so to speak, they'll say, we're all going to sit in the house and just read another book. Everything is going to collapse. And I only talk about need for objects, right? That people like toys and things like that. Right? Also in the way we behave. Right? Ubidiot hachadashot. Right? You got to know everything. I'm lacking. Right? If I don't know what's happening in Sri Lanka, then there's something wrong with me. Right? I got to know. Right? I got to read the news. Right? And certainly in the more local things, if I got to know. Right? right? You got to be tuned in. Right? I got to have a little, box next to me that goes ping every, 18 seconds, so I'll be able to keep abreast of what's happening in the world. That's creating needs and needs, right? Right. Right? Interesting. And footnote you'd bet, right, what the Rav said. Rav Hosif, Kiyom b'America, right? You can tell me if it's true or not, but in America, he says, Im Adam lo magia shezuf lebeit knesset b'Chanukah, az hu miskein. Right? If a guy doesn't come with a suntan to shul on Hanukkah, right, then everybody's going to think that he's a miskein, right? What a poor guy, right? He can't afford a winter suntan, right? There's something wrong with him, right? Right. V'lo yitnu lo credit, v'lo yitchadnu. People won't give him any credit. They won't marry him. What kind of guy? What kind of shlamazel is this? That he's so poor, right? Whatever. He doesn't. People need things, right? Okay. Josh, you probably know about these things more than I do, but
Maybe I'm sheltered here in Passaic. I don't know.
okay.
A lot of people go to Florida, that's for sure.
A lot of people go. A lot of people come back with suntans, if not after Hanukkah, right? Anyway. Okay. Anyway, that's what he says. Okay. Well, let's just skip the paragraph there. The next thing. That's what it means. Beten Rishoyim Techsar. The stomach of Rishoyim is lacking. Umisha mitbonen roeh shekoat. And now he's going to get to the point how this is going to lead to the geula. Shekol tasiyat hatzrachim naseh leabsurd. This whole industry of creating more and more needs, right? I'll tell you again. I don't know how it is by you guys, but I was just talking to some relatives who are visiting from Israel, from America. They're here we have a family simcha. By the way, my grandson's getting married tomorrow, so we have a family simcha. So some relatives of my wife came in for the simcha, and we're sitting around talking. They say, in America, first of all your kids have to have matching pajamas, right? And then, not only that, but in America, they have to have Shabbos pajamas, right? Because it's not enough to have just weekday pajamas. They have to have Shabbos. Is that true? I don't know. That's what they told me. Right? Yeah. That's a good example of tasiyat tzrachim, right? We're just making new needs, right? It's certainly true that you walk down the street today in Kiryat Sefer, you can tell who's sister because all the sisters are wearing the same clothes, right? So they can have 20 girls playing jump rope in the front of my house. I know exactly who the sisters are because all the sisters are wearing the same clothes, right? That's the way it goes, So it's a new need, right? When I was growing up, my sisters didn't have the same clothes, and they got along fine, Today you go to a wedding, everybody in the wedding party, all the women have to have exactly the same gowns, right? Exactly, right? And chas v'sholom, you should be missing something. This is a tasiyat tzrachim. This is a made-up need. Believe me. You can go to a wedding, and one woman could wear blue, and one can wear green, one can wear purple, and nothing will happen. The world will not fall down, right? But that's the way. That's the tasiyah. That's the needs. Okay, so it's going to reach an absurd. He says, it can't be. If every hour there's 5,000 new cars on the road, already is absurd, right? Eventually, the roads are not going to be able to hold the cars. Kama od efshar. We're limited, right? How much can we hold, right? How much physical, how much megashmius can we hold? The pasuk says, "Tzadik ochel lesova nafsho ubeten rishayim techsar." The tzaddik eats for the satisfaction of his nafesh, and but the stomach of the Roshayim is techsar. Interesting pshat. Pirish hagrosham. What does it mean? Tzaddik ochel lesova nafsho. That we understand. Tzaddik ein ochel rak kidei chiyuno b'chdei savo. Right? A tzaddik only eats what he needs to live in order to be satisfied. That's the way a tzaddik eats. Right? Ubeten rishayim techsar. He says, the beten rishayim techsar klomar. Listen to the pshat that the Gros says. Shel rishayim chaser lahem beten. They're missing. Their stomach is too small. Shekatam bitna me'echal achilasam. It's not that they're hungry, right? No, it's not they're hungry. They have enough to eat, right? They don't have less to eat than the tzaddik. The tzaddik is full, but what's the problem with the Russia? The Russia feels My stomach is too small, all right? I can't take everything, right? I want more and more. Mevuar Hashem rotzim od beten. They want another stomach. Aval beten he mugbelet, but it's limited. How many stomachs? Right? Okay. I mean, I read about people who go fancy restaurants and they intentionally vomit in the middle of the meal so they can finish. They can have more to eat, right? Because otherwise, it's going to be a waste.
The Gemara already talked about that.
Yeah, right.
Fik Ravizin.
What?
Fik Ravizin. The Gemara already talked about that.
Yeah. Okay, right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and that's the stomach. That's the beten, right? So we dua sipur al Socrates. Okay, I guess if you know about Socrates, you know this. Shapam hitalech ba'atuna. He was walking in Athens. V'ra b'chalonot kol minei dvarim yafim. He saw all kinds of nice things. V'amar shelo yadash yesh bo'olam kol kach harbe dvarim shu lo tzarich. He says, I didn't know that there's so many things that I didn't need. Right? Well, as he quotes in English here, what a lot of things I don't need. Right? But that's okay. Socrates was a little smarter than your average guy. So he thought, yeah, I don't need those things, right? But everybody else says, I need them, right? Everybody feels I need them, right? Right? Tell me one person who has lots of possessions who doesn't feel that he needs all of his possessions, right? I need them, right? Well, I need them. That's the tarbus, that's the minus, and that's the malchus is hofich leminus. Okay, we'll stop here, Mitzvah Hashem. Next time we'll wrap this up, and hopefully we'll also start the next year on Ma'amer Yud Beis, which is the last in the sugya of Dorsha ben David Ba. Bezrat Hashem. Okay,
Thank
my
you,
friends,
Allah.
thank you for joining. Kol Tuv, be well.
Thank you. God.
Okay, everybody have a good.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Bye.